In addition to the basic for loop, another common repetition structure in Java is the while true loop. And the basic syntax or structure of a while true loop is simply the keyword while, and then there's a condition that you would place here, and then the code that you want to execute will go between braces, same as with a for loop. And again, while this is true, it will keep looping, on into infinity. But whenever this condition becomes false, that is the sentinel value for this loop. So let's take a look at the structure of a while true loop. And in the previous example, we looked at a for loop, and we just counted a variable, and we incremented and decremented. We counted backwards and forwards just to see how that works. So let's see how that would work in a while true loop. I would use the keyword while, open and closing braces, in the body of a loop, and I need a variable declared outside the for loop to act as sort of a counter, just to give me a sentinel value. In the last example, we used banana, so we'll just kind of go with the same idea there. And while banana is less than 10, okay, that could be the condition of our while true loop. So the sentinel value of our true loop will be when banana becomes 10, if I keep adding 1. And what I could do is simply add 1 to banana each time I loop through. And I'll do the same thing we did before. We'll simply display the value and this is known as concatenation. When we take variables, integers, string literals, and put them all together and pass them to a function, we're concatenating, or putting together a sort of a master string composed of all these little bits of strings and numbers here. So let's run this, and it looks a little bit different, but you can see that anything between this brace and this brace, the way NetBeans highlights it, is going to repeat and keep repeating until we reach the sentinel value where banana is no longer less than 10. Let's compile this. And there we have 0 through 9. And again, we could count backwards if we wanted to, simply by modifying it such that we could say while banana is greater than 0, and instead of a postfixed increment, we could change that to a postfixed decrement right there. Alright. We'll run the compiler. And whoops. Let's start banana out at 10. One more step there. And so now we're just counting backwards. 10 to 1. So we're not really doing any, behavior-wise, we're not achieving anything different than what we did with the for loop. This is just another repetition structure that can be very useful in Java. Now both of these, the for loop and the while true loop, are known as pre-test repetition structures. Pre-test because they test for the condition first, long before they execute the code. And so if you code things carefully, these two structures are actually adequate. However, there may be situations where this code could never execute. For example, what if I started z out to be 5 instead of 0? Then the code I put here would never execute. What if down here, we saw what happened before, what happens if banana starts at 0? Then this would never execute. And the reason is that they're pre-test conditions, or pre-test repetition structures. There is a post-test repetition structure, and that's the third one we'll go over, and that is a do-while loop. Okay, and it's, while these would be pre-test, this is truly a post-test repetition structure. And if we were going to do a do-while loop, it would sort of be, we'll do that as far as the same behavior, but it would sort of be the inverse of what we're doing here. So in other words, I could say do, and I'd add the body of code that I wanted to execute. I'd put that here in these do braces, And then at the very end of this, I'd have a while, and I would close it with a semicolon. And the condition or test, let's say while it's greater than 0. We'll just make that kind of our test condition once again. So, you know, if this were a pretest loop, if banana starts out with an initial value of 0, this would never happen. But being a post-test loop, this code will happen at least once, and then it'll reach the sentinel value and break out of the loop. So a little bit different from for. See, it happens at least once, even though the sentinel value, you know, or exit condition for the loop has already been met before it even began. So that would be, you know, use for a do while loop. And on the other hand, if I started out at 10 and I decrement, it does the exact same thing the while true loop did. In this case, counts down from 10 to 1. So 3 different types of repetition structures: a for loop, a while true loop, a do while loop. Remember that for and while are pretest loops, and that do while is a post-test loop. Remember, just as a for loop, a while true loop may also contain an initialization, a condition, and an update. For example, in the following while true loop, the code to repeat goes in curly braces. Int x equals 0 would be the initialization above. Inside the parentheses, while x is less than 5 would be the condition, and the postfix increment, adding 1 to x, would be the update. Remember, the condition required to exit a while true loop is called the sentinel value. The keyword break provides another means of exiting a loop structure. Achieving the sentinel value is generally preferred over using break to exit a while true loop.